Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today, we're taking you on an extraordinary journey of restoration, dedication, and passion. We've spent the past 2 years breathing new life into a vintage 1952 M38 military Jeep. And trust us, it's been a wild ride. From uncovering hidden damage to custom metalwork, join us as we reveal the transformation of this rugged legend. Our adventure began when this piece of military history rolled into our shop. The mad scientist, Scott Brown, didn't waste any time and started the disassembly process, peeling back the layers of time and neglect. But what we found underneath was a battlefield of rust and botched repairs. After sending the frame, body, and several parts for industrial sandblasting, the true extent of the damage was revealed. Rust had claimed much of the metal, hidden under layers of fiberglass, bondo, and brazing, a testament to well-intended but misguided past repairs. In our shop, we have a standard that doesn't compromise with shortcuts. The only path forward was clear: cut away the decay and replace it with new, strong metal. It was a daunting task, but for Scott, it was just another challenge to conquer. Though in better shape compared to the body, still required Scott's expert touch. With precision and care, he treated every inch, ensuring the skeleton of this Jeep would stand the test of time. The body needed more than just a touch-up. It required a full-scale operation. At Scott's home workshop, equipped with all the necessary tools and machinery, the real magic happened.
Here we have our M38 tub that we had sandblasted at the shop, and it is here at my home shop to get some metal work done. One of the few things that we're going to do to this is we're actually going to move the seat back to allow a little more space between the steering wheel and your belly. It's a common modification done on these early Jeeps. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to fix some of this oil canning, how deep in this is. It's likewise here. I actually have already started right here straightening that out. Also, we're going to be redoing some patchwork that was done back in the day, the old school style. You see here, that's actually screen, like what belongs in a window with bondo in it. And there's a big hole here that back in the day, we didn't fill holes, we didn't fix stuff, we just put bolts like this one right here in, bondoed over top of it, put a paint job on it, and we were on to the next guy. Now with that said, this tub is in really nice shape for how old it is. We're talking 70 years here, and there's a lot to work with, but we have to get rid of some of their not so good patches. Some of that you can see here. Here they have put a piece of metal over top. And we have a seam right here that obviously this stops. On the other side, I already removed it, and this is why you don't do this, guys. See all this rust, the pitting in the metal? That's what you saw on the outside. You're literally asking this quarter to rust away. You can see why they covered it up. It's bent here, had some dents here. So they just put that over top of it and ran away. I'm actually probably going to cut this here, remove this piece on its entirety, straighten it out, straighten out the Jeep, then put it back and weld it back in. Now I'll make that strong again. You can see how weak that is. So we'll get that all straightened back out and repaired. Some other stuff that we need to fix is our floor perforation in the metal. So we'll be cutting out the driver's side floor and that riser between the rear floor and the front floor, and that'll all be replaced with new. Something else that we found is we have rust up in here, so this needs a patch. And there's a reason that happened is there's a brace on the inside. Dirt and mud and stuff gets stuck in between there and it rusts it out. Up here we also have holes, and that's because our battery box is right here. On an M38 we had two batteries, 24 volt, 12 volt battery here and a 12 volt battery in the engine compartment. Well, there's these holes in the battery box that allowed muck and mire to get up in there and just sit. So I'll be cutting this all out and doing my best to make these beads to replicate it to look as stock as possible. A couple cool things we found after it sandblasted. See right here we have an M stamped. So that means that this is a double layered piece of material here because it's military. Make it a little bit more robust. So we're on precursor after week 2 of working on the tub. At this point we have gotten the seat set back on the driver's side, which you have seen before. I off camera went ahead and did the passenger side to match. On this phase of the project we're going to be repairing small areas of the tub. There's lots of little damage, honestly almost everywhere. Kind of like this. We're going to be cutting this all out. This is all perforated metal from rot from the battery and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to hand form these beads. So we're going to show you next. I'm making those beads and patches and go from there. These are patches I am making for the floor. This is the old piece. Reason why we're replacing it is you can see here this gold. That is an old type of body repair called brazing. Problem with that is if you go to try to weld this crack up and you get any bit of that in your weld, it'll volcano and explode on you. So I try to replace it where I can. You'll see on the back side why they were brazing it. We're all thin pits all the way through here. We got surface cracks all the way through. We got holes on the edge of the bead. Likewise on this piece. Again, cracking and that kind of stuff. These actually overlap each other on the tub. So what I started with this morning is just getting a general shape of metal that just a little bit bigger than that. And then I formed this by any means necessary with a hammer. And we're going to show, I started this one, we're going to show finishing it off. This one was actually harder to do because it has more of a pronounced shape. And then we'll give you a shot of them sitting on the tub, give you an idea what they look like. I don't have a die for my bead roller that's this wide. So what I have done in the past is you can set your vise at a given distance. I go ahead and set it so that the bead I am trying to form fits down in the jaws. And I just simply take this part of the hammer and slowly form it out. Now the problem with that is that you're stretching it here, but not here. So you can see it's humping this over. And if you were just to beat this back down, there's still too much metal there. So we go over here, and this is a shrinker stretcher. We have shrinking dies in here. So we put that in there, and you'll immediately see the piece flatten back out. That's taking that material and gathering it together. So now we go back over there and continue the process. Let's go over to the tub and see how it fits. So that actually looks pretty good. We're obviously on top everywhere around, so this being up a little bit is what we want. So now what we'll do is we will scribe this patch, trim out the floor, the match. That'll sit down in there and we'll be able to weld all the way around. So this week's update is we're still working on the cowl of this M38. You can see we have a giant hole through there that wasn't there before. We're going to show you that reason why in a minute. While this is all open, I'm going to get in and I'm going to work out some of the dents and dings and low spots in the cowl as best I can just to make it better. So what happened here is the battery box is right here. And because this Jeep is originally 24 volt, there's a 12 volt battery here and a 12 volt battery underneath the hood. And age and time and battery acid took its toll, as you're going to see. So this morning I started out, well actually into last week, I cut this piece out because I had saw some holes here that we talked about last time, and then realized there was a solid chunk of rust between the two. So this morning I went around and I found all the spot welds holding the box, drilled all those out, and actually physically removed the box right out of the cowl. This is the firewall piece, and I actually started by just cutting this part out, and then when I saw how bad it was, decided to cut it out bigger. As you can see, it's extensively rusted, bad, holes all the way through it. Luckily though, because I removed this piece, I can see that it's not all the way through into the cowl, it's just in that isolated spot. So this originally mounted here. This is the battery box that's out of the Jeep. And you can see here we have similar stuff. We got rust holes all the way through, and there's a seam that runs through how they made this box originally. So it is through that whole seam. So you can see my lines, my plan is to make a whole new piece from here to here and replace that whole section. I'm going to try to put this seam back in it just so it's as close to original as possible. I took this out and I started sandblasting this in my little blast cabinet, and here you can see what I'm talking about. That is battery acid that has leached through those screw holes and behind, because there's a bunch of stuff that bolts onto this box, as you can see. That is this week's update. This is what we're working on, and we'll continue to update you guys as we move through this process and keep working on it.
He said, come in. Oh, he started banging all of a sudden, make it seem like he was working on something. Look at this nice little metal shop. Look at it. Look at you. This is nice. You stole your windshield wiper.
For the Rambler.
Is that what these are, Rambler windshield wipers? Yep. Hey, look at this fancy machine. There's something missing here.
Yep. And there was something missing there and there this morning.
There's a lot of metal in this now.
Old, new.
Wow, look at that.
So that was there.
You know that was the first light ever invented right there?
Stop it.
That was the first light. Was Edison part of that?
It's actually worth a lot of money. I looked it up the other day trying to find a new lens. That's like $600 sitting there.
Why?
I don't know. We keep pulling this out off the tub.
And what is this?
That is fiberglass.
And for people who may or may not know, why would they put fiberglass there?
PC version or
Yeah, the PC version. We got to do the PC. Mike, our kids watch this, right?
they were scared of the holes, so they covered the holes.
That was good.
They used originally this was to look like a piece of cloth that was woven that would make you really itchy. You put it over top of a fending hole, and then you would resin it and Bondo it and run away.
So you have lots of fiberglass in it.
I had to flip it over to...
Did your wife help you?
No. So when I dressed this weld down, you could start to see the seam again. And that
What does dressing the weld down mean to you?
grinding the weld down to where it's smooth.
Anybody can be a
Yes. Grinder makes you a good welder.
grinder makes you a good welder.
But in this situation, you need... I don't like Bondo, so I want my patch to be as nice and smooth as possible. If it requires filler, it's going to require the littlest amount of filler.
Right.
Not
Just a top coat. What we would call like a top coat.
Not fiberglass.
Not fiberglass. It would just be a little bit of... That's actually really smooth, though.
Anyway,
And wait. So, and for those of you who are watching who don't know, for it to be that smooth, that means that Scott had to do a really good job of having a good steady hand and getting good penetration with the weld wire itself. And
first you got to make your joint as tight as possible. I mean, like no gap.
right.
And then you weld it, and then you dress it / grind it. And in this situation, it was too thin, so then I went ahead and I welded the back side where you can't see it, because there'll be a gas tank here. And I left that weld higher than I normally would.
Okay.
And then I went through and I actually took the TIG and fusioned the seam back together.
Like nuclear fusion?
Sort of.
Stop it.
And then over here, I actually tried something new. This had some gappage, which again, most people would just Bondo over it and move on. I tried the TIG over top of it and fusioned the MIG weld into the panel, which smoothed it out more. So, and then I hammered and dollied it. It's still got a little bit of a high there, but
Why do this? And we did talk in the podcast previously. We did. So we did talk in the podcast why people would want to rebuild a vintage vehicle.
yeah.
So
Those
then,
are crazy. Like me.
because they're crazy.
Yeah.
So why spend the time, energy, and resource on
Because
a
it's
tub like this?
because it's only the original body once, and while you can buy a reproduction tub, they are one size fits most. Most people think that, you know, they see all this holes and rust and it's scary, and they think, well, I'm just going to go buy the new tub. And sometimes that's a good choice. Like in hashtag not a restoration, there wasn't anything to rebuild.
Right.
If we would have blasted that body, we wouldn't have had much left.
Well, and hashtag not a restoration
It's a little different.
is just a run-of-the-mill CJ5 originally.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is an M38.
Got
This
some pedigree.
This has got pedigree. This was a military body.
Yep.
This is for people who are military reenactors, military enthusiasts. This has got the romance, the nostalgia, the cool factor.
The biggest thing is you're not. Either way, it's going to cost you some money. So arguably, this is probably a little bit more and a little bit more time. Obviously, it takes more skill. The other weird thing we're doing here is you can buy panels, which you make those new bodies out of, but we're not doing that here. We're doing Scott panels wherever I put it. You know, this was just a flat piece of sheet metal 5 minutes ago.
And what's cool is it was flat, but now it's actually got a break or a bend
Yep.
here. It's actually got some, different measurement to it and whatnot.
That's another secret is you make your patch larger than it needs to be. Like if Davey wanders over here and looks at it, you'll see where that gap, that line is actually overhangs right now. And that's how you get your gaps tight, is you make your patch bigger, you scribe it from the backside, and you slowly trim that away until it drops into the spot. And this patch will actually go on hold and get put off to the side, and I actually have to make this patch next because that goes underneath this piece. So you have to unbuild the sandwich and start at the bottom bun and work your way back up. Also, this will have to be repaired before this goes on. But while I had the piece was fresh and hadn't wandered away, because that happens,
Because Scott things.
I made the start of that patch so that when I go to finish it, it'll already be ready. Just like I already have a piece made for the floor that obviously isn't welded in yet. I want to be able to get the both sides of this panel, just like I had this one, for hammering and doweling, it's a lot harder to do it from the other side. So that's why this will be last. I did this morning. This was actually made before and not put in. It was because I wanted this to be strong before I started cutting more structure out of the body. That's the other thing is if you go to do this yourself, you just start cutting everything out. Next thing you know, you have a noodle.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any strength.
The body starts to move and ebb and flow in ways that you did not intend it, nor was it originally in that position.
Yeah.
The other thing is, this is USA steel, right? So any of our reproduction bodies available on today's market are
overseas.
They're made overseas. So they're all import products. So that would be the other advantage is we have a era-specific military nostalgia body, but then it's also USA made steel for the military. And
they were, there was little changes over the course of the production. So this body may not be the same as 500 units newer than it or older than it. And when you buy a reproduction body, they have to kind of meld those into a pot.
Right, it's one size fits most.
This will be what it was, just not rusty.
And not full of fiberglass, right?
Look at what we found in here. So this is, I've had my body blasted. I've believe it's rust free at this point, but it's not. So you can see inside here all the rust that are still in spots that you can't get. That is why some people believe in dipping bodies. It actually gets down inside all these places. That's actually a harder process, and you have to neutralize that once it's done. Otherwise, it keeps eating the body too. We're going to do what we can when we expose. So this will get some sandblasting before the floor goes back in.
What happened to the wood that was in there?
So surprisingly, this doesn't have wood everywhere. On the bottom side, it's on the floor, side of the body, it has wood in it, and there is some wood further up, but it's kind of like they were learning, because the earlier Jeeps, the 40s Jeeps, had wood in all these channels, and that, as you can imagine, that held moisture and rotted those out pretty bad. So I don't know if they were learning when they got to the 50s and only did it in very strategic spots or what, but this is probably in a lot better shape than it could have been because it doesn't have that rust or that wood to make rust. I also found this piece here is not very good shape, so this will have to get a piece across here, that will get cut off and the new piece welded on, and we'll spot weld it to this new riser. We're using 18 gauge steel almost everywhere on this body, which is very, very close to what the factory thickness is, except for certain spots like this is actually 16 gauge. So I had to make this out of a thicker piece because that's our body mount. That's a lot of strength across the middle of the body. If you've been watching, you've seen us move the seats back, both sides. While I had that up and exposed, I've gone ahead and did some more spot welds on that. We've got some patches, like there was one there. I got to grind those up with just some pinholes. Down there, Davey is the show. You see there's a lot of smuts right down in there with my toe. That literally has fiberglass cloth just shoved in the hole. They didn't even put resin in it. It's just got fiberglass stuffed in there. So that's going to be fun. So, all right. God. So we had a bunch of rust in this seam that was right behind the seat, so went ahead and cut that out, cleaned it up best I could. There was some pitting there, but can't always get all of that removed. Neutralized it. I put some weld through primer on the inside of my patch and on the tub, help keep that as protected as possible. Then went ahead and fit it all up, got it welded in. Once that cools off, then I will address the weld, and it, for intents and purposes, will disappear. You can see, since the last time you guys were with us, there's no longer a hole here. So that is all new. This bottom part of the riser is new, all welded in. Floor is all new. You can see our spot welds that we welded in the lower brace. And show here, I already addressed all these. And the other part that we got done while you guys were away is this patch was made and welded in. This patch was made and welded in. And we welded all along here from the floor to this. So now that is all strong again. We've got welds all along here. So what we are up to next is you'll see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pinholes. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 there. And then down here it's a lot worse. See, that's all bad and we got a bunch of dirt in there. I'll be just cutting out pieces and welding them back in. We also have to address this, and there's some rust up in here on the step I gotta fix. The other thing we did while Davey was away is this was bent up a lot worse than it is here. This was bent a lot worse, and this was pushed in a lot. See, it's not perfect yet. I'm still working on it, but it's getting slowly back into shape. This was all way worse than it is. Got that straightened up a lot more. We melted out some more fiberglass down here, which you can't see very well. That side needs a lot of love, but we will do all that when the tub's on the other side. Once that is addressed, we'll be moving on to this mess where someone removed the rear seat mounts with an air hammer at one time. So be cutting that out and fixing it. All these circles are all dents. I'm going to work out best I can. A couple more things and this side of the tub will be done. I'd say we got probably another couple weeks doing this, and then we'll flip it over and we'll start over. So down in that little step area, it's literally full of fiberglass strands. So you can kind of see it down in here. So it's pretty bad. But that's where we're at on this project. We'll just keep on moving forward on it. So this is the old body mount. And you can see that we saw some rust in a couple spots. What was hiding in there is this was completely full of dirt and mud. And if you look at the inside, there used to be a reinforcement here for the body bolt, and you can see how much worse it looks. So I made this. This started out as a flat piece of steel, and we have copied it as best I can. I have no idea what this original reinforcement looked like, so I came up with my own design, and I'm doubling up the thickness there, and then we are going to be putting this in there, so we'll have 2 walls on either side of the bolt, and will literally be 3 layers thick there, and in between each layer I'm painting it so there's black paint underneath this and inside here to help protect it. And if we bring it over here, these are Clecos. Those I haven't watched before. They allow you to hold a panel on. So once we are done, this will get spot welded here and here. And I made holes on the inside of this. And this has to go over like that, and that will get welded. Surprisingly, from the factory, it was welded here and 1 bead there, and that was it. So it'll actually be stronger than it was originally. You can see we got body bolt hole through the floor, the other one through the toe board. So everything lines up. As Davey came in, I was just welding in these rotisserie welds for that inner reinforcement. See, I stepped the panel here so it fits over top of that, and there'll be a weld there. in there as well. So that is what we're currently working on the M38 project. The other thing we found since the last time you guys are here is you'll notice there's a big gaping hole here. There was a ton of fiberglass hiding in this area, and the inner brace is actually rusted out. So I got to repair that, and then repair this outer piece, and then repair the step. You can see I have some projected lines of probably where we're going to be trimmed out to by the time that's done. The other thing we did, this was badly damaged. I repaired that. What we removed, you see how torn and bent and messed up it was. The other thing I did is I smoothed this out a bunch more. Obviously it's still not done. That is what we're working on the M38 project. Still got a couple cracks to weld up, but we're getting there. We're getting closer and closer to getting this in the primer and then back onto the frame. We have uncovered a previous bad juju in this bodywork. This was literally packed full of strand fiberglass, like they cut up little pieces of mat and stuffed it in there. The inner brace that runs all the way up to the cowl, the whole bottom of it is rotted off. The floor that goes between that and these supports has some holes, and obviously it's propagated out into this step and up into this panel. And I've been trying to decide how I want to repair this for a while. I've come to the conclusion that I'm just going to remove the bottom of the cowl. I can take it over to the workbench and I can work on that area. That will open up this brace. I'll be able to repair that, repair the floor, inspect this channel for any damage, and then I can simply weld this back in. In order to do that, we have to get some spot welds removed. So that is what you see us here. We have a drilled hole here. You see a couple small holes here. That is because on the back side, I have removed 3 spot welds. With that said, there was already compromising problems in this area where some welds are already broken loose. So this is honestly kind of helpful. We also have a stress crack here that I'll be able to repair again on the bench really nicely, kind of make a adequate repair. While we're talking about what we've done on the Jeep, I'm gonna have Dave come around. And so again, we had damage in this general area. Now we did not have rust out. We had purely weld failing on this corner. This whole body edge had lifted up, and this pocket here had been removed at one time and then just kind of hastily put back on. So what I did is I started trying to just simply wanted to spot weld this back in place. Realized really fast that they had shoved fiberglass resin, this is inside the toolbox, down into this seam, and it didn't make the panels attach. All it did was make it impossible for me to weld. So I went ahead and figured out how far forward that resin was. I cut the panel out. I was able then to take this side of the piece of the body over to the sandblast cabinet, blast both sides really clean, clean this edge. Then I was able to clean the edge of the body. We also had a stress crack here. Went ahead and fixed that while I was at it. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spot welds holding this firmly to the side of the Jeep, so it's properly installed. And then we went ahead and had some holes to fill on this side. I removed this pocket, filled some holes on this side, and then plug welded this back on. Now we are equal distance from the bottom of the body to this pocket and from here to here. I also referenced some photos, and you will see we have 4 holes here, 2 holes here, and 2 here. This is the positioning these are in from the factory. So it is supposed to be offset to the back. So I went ahead and followed that as close as I could. Other than a few other little things, we are slowly getting to the end of the rabbit hole of all this fixing. We do have a little bit more repair in the back, but once this big chunk is, we're really, running downhill. We'll be able to get this off to bodywork and then finally into that OD green paint. Before we were showing you some of that for a while, we were kind of looking at before we cut it apart. And here we have the pieces on the table. So we have our old pieces, the cardboard templates I made from those pieces, and then our new pieces that are fit up but aren't welded in yet. Basically, you try to remove these pieces with as much in one piece as you possibly can, and then you have to make a piece and you do all your bends on that. And there's a good key: if you can't bend a piece of cardboard, then you aren't going to be able to bend a piece of metal that way. So that means you have to make it multiple pieces or some other method. This piece here was pretty simple overall. Let's see, trace it on a piece of metal, and you can see I got my Cleco holes here for fitting that in place. This piece was more of a challenge. Now this is 18 gauge steel, this is 16 gauge steel. Actually, it might even been a scooch thicker yet. When they were making these bodies, they could make them pretty much any gauge they wanted to. I have to make it as close as possible. So this is the bottom of what we call the cowl foot, and you can see it's literally rotted in half. This is what our body mount literally goes through, so this is kind of important. So made a cardboard template, fit up that as best I could, fit that to the body. This hole here obviously wasn't even there, so I had to try to trace that off of the other side, and then made a new piece. And then that's where the fit up comes in, where you make it as close to this, but you can see there's a lot of bit of difference because there was a lot of trim here, cut there, grind there, finesse. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. And once it's all welded in and blended in, nobody's gonna know any better. So that's the way we get all the layers of the sandwich put back together. We still have one more piece, that's this piece here. So you got it all sandblasted, but I have to repair this whole section and this whole section yet. Oh, and this crack. Once this is repaired, then I will assemble this all dry fit, is what they call it, before any welding happens. Make sure everything fits, because at that point you can still go through and you can trim a little bit. If you start welding everything in and then the outside doesn't fit, it's too late. You've got to recut everything out. So at this point, our next step will be to make paper templates off of this, make some new pieces for it, get them cut out, fit into this, fit that to the tub, and then we can finally assemble the sandwich, dry. Everything is copacetic. Then we'll do some alignment marks, and then we will put this piece in first, then this piece in second, then finally this piece over top. So that's kind of in a nutshell is why some of this stuff takes so time it does, but this is how you have a good, safe, quality repair where the body has strength. Like I said, this is literally a front body mount for this. This is where your step is. People can put their foot here. If this isn't right, then things are gonna crack, break, move. And usually when you see stuff like this, where there is cracking, that's because that something in the structure of the Jeep started to give up and this sunk, and the fender's attached to it, and the fender doesn't want to move that direction. So it's not necessarily a bad design or that kind of thing, it's because the structural integrity of the body is actually compromised just enough that these other pieces start seeing some stress. And this is a non-reinforced area, it just easily for it to crack and to cause issues. Luckily, we're going to fix the structural parts of it, so once we weld up that crack, it won't crack again. So that overall is what we're doing here today. One final thing we'll show you on any of these pieces when I expose this channel. See, we got some rust in here. I'm going to clean this all up, and this will all get painted before any of this gets welded on. And we're going to get down into this channel as far as possible. Again, that is to protect it and to eliminate as much rust as possible. Likewise, that brace, the middle piece that we showed you there, will get some paint between it and this outside skin to, again, give it a chance protection. And obviously, once that's all repaired, they'll be seam sealed, primed, and then final painted. Just trying to give this as much protection as possible so it'll last another 60 to 70 years.
After countless hours of hard work, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to quality, the transformation is nothing short of miraculous. What was once a rust-covered relic is now a shining beacon of history, strength, and resilience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more restoration stories from our shop. Until next time, keep driving history forward.